Jacob Kirkegaard is going to start his, is going to give the presentation of his work, Labyrinthitis. So please take your seats and remain calm and quiet.
Remain quiet and calm. I'm not going to say anything before everybody shuts up. I'm going to present a piece that I made a while ago, some years back. My name is Jacob, and I am very delighted to be here, as a matter of fact. It's a very long time since I've been here. I was playing here with an acoustic orchestra once, I think 15 years ago. And yeah, thank you very much for inviting me back. This piece was originally invited or commissioned by the Medical Museum in Copenhagen, Medicinsk Museum. They had a conference on biomedicine, and they wanted an art piece. And they didn't want a visual art piece, they wanted a sound piece. And they asked me to create a piece for this conference. Can you turn down this peak, this sort of feedback? Thanks. And I was asked one thing, to do a piece based on sounds of cells, something on a cellular level. And some years before, I had heard about the ear as being, that the ear was able to create or generate sound. And this was something that was extremely intriguing to me, because I work with sound a lot, and what you call sound art, perhaps, recording sounds from all other kinds of impossible places on Earth. And I'm using my ear a lot, and thinking that I could actually use my ear to listen to my ear, to hear my own ear play or produce a tone, was a bit mind-blowing to me, and quite paradoxical as well. So I decided to go into researching on this. And as a matter of fact, I found some great scientists here in Denmark at the DTU. One of them is called Torsten Daug at the Center of Applied Hearing Research. Does the sound disturb you here? Okay.
We're all ears.
Great. So there is this phenomenon that I'm going to introduce to you. It's called otoacoustic emissions. And there are broadly two kinds of otoacoustic emissions. It's O-T-O, acoustic emissions. There are spontaneous otoacoustic emissions, and there are triggered or evoked. The spontaneous ones mean that the ear, on some people, are producing or is producing tones for no particular known reason. And the people who produce those tones, or the people who have ears who like make tones just like constantly, can't hear them themselves. But in some cases, when they're really loud, other people can hear them. So it's not tinnitus, you know, tinnitus. Because tinnitus is not real sound you can record. It's more like a subjective phenomenon that I'm not going to talk about now, but this phenomenon is real sound coming out of the ear. And I was wondering, why do people not hear them themselves? I don't know actually, but I was thinking of, if you have heard them since birth, perhaps you just don't hear them anymore, you block them out, something. the scientist who agreed to record my ears told me he had a practice in London, a laboratory, and there was this harbor guy, like worker, who came in with his little daughter, and he was really confused because his little daughter was, he could hear tones coming out of her head or her ear, and he was, I don't know, very confused, and they measured her and found that she had a very spontaneous emission, but she couldn't hear it herself. So some of you have this. It's very low, but maybe afterwards when you come home, if you don't have too much tinnitus from being here and listening to my piece, then you can try to listen to each other's ears. I won't promise you hear anything because it's like around 0 dB, which means sound, but very low. Then there is another phenomenon of this called, as I said before, the triggered or the evoked autoacoustic emissions. And that is that everybody who can hear, who has an active ear that works, is possible to evoke tones, or to trigger tones in the ears of you, because you can hear me, and me. And the scientists use that technique to determine hearing in babies, whether babies can hear or not. Because how do we find out if a baby can hear or not? What they do is to, do you know what the cochlea is? Spiral organ, the tiniest bone in our body. In there is a basilar membrane, and we have hair cells connected to this. And say if we play one tone into our ear, let's say 400 hertz, at 400 beats a second, then we have like a certain place in the cochlea. We have a standing wave like sound in this liquid, and where this hair cell is connected, it vibrates and sends neural signals to the brain. As far as I've understood it, that sound is coming here. What the scientists have found out is if we have two frequencies of one certain ratio in an interval called 1 to 1.2, 1 to 2, 1 to 1.2, and that doesn't matter if it's high or lower, some work better than others, but if we have this interval sending into the ear, in the basilar membrane, we don't only have two standing waves, but we also have a third one that comes as a result of what we send in. They call it distortion product. What happens is that this hair cell sitting there is vibrating so strongly that it produces a tone. Real tone. Boo. So, sorry?
It's alive.
You will hear. Listen. Don't be so quick. Why is it a lie?
It's alive. Alive.
Oh, I thought you said it was a lie. I can't hear anything here. It destroyed my ears. It's alive. Yes, it's active. Sorry, I didn't hear you well. So, where was I? Basically, they play these two tones into the ears of the listener, or of the baby, and they can tell if the ear works, the ear will produce a third tone in response of those two tones that are sent in. And they can say exactly what pitch, you know, pitch tuning. And then they can calculate, if I play these two tones into the ear, we will have a slightly lower tone. The ear will generate a slightly lower tone, a specific tone that is determined from the other two. And if they get that tone from the baby, that means the baby can hear. So, they agreed to record my ears because I had to do the sound piece, remember, for the Medical Museum. And I went to visit them with this big expectation of recording, you know, having sounds out of my ears, because I once had a girlfriend who told me I had been working with sound all day and with my headphones, and she had been having her hands in front of my ears, not touching my ears, but discovering how hot they were, like radiating my ears. And she was like, "Oh, you have so hot ears. They're like so warm." And I was, "Wow, yeah, I've been working all day, you know, doing sound." And so I don't know if I think I had this idea that I would have very emitting ears, active ears, because I'm working with them so much. So I was in this little chamber, and I got it to a little microphone in my ear, and I had to be very quiet. And when I came out, they told me that I had no sound whatever coming out of my ear. So I was one of the many people who don't emit any spontaneous acoustic emissions. That was a bit disappointing. So I had to get back into the laboratory, and then they would play these two tones into my ear, this ratio, 2 sine waves, to evoke my ear. And what I discovered there was that I could hear 3 tones. I could hear the 2 tones that were played into my ear, but I could also hear a 3rd tone. I could hear my own ear playing. Yeah? So I got a lot of tones evoked in my ear that day, and they were recorded. Afterwards, I filtered away the sine waves that were used to produce those tones, and what I did was to take the tones of my ears and tune them into this same interval, or into the same ratio as what they were using with the sine waves to produce tones in my ears. So what I'm doing in this little composition that I created was to take the sounds or the tones generated by my ears and tune them in such a way, in this ratio of 1 to 1.2, so that when you listen to them, they should evoke tones in your ears. That's the idea. So since I know what tone I'm producing in your ears, because they told me the calculation, because scientists always have to know what they're listening to, what they want to find. So they told me, if you play this tone and that tone, you'll get that tone. So I tuned my ear tones into those frequencies and say, okay, now I want to create that tone. So what I did, the composition is made like this. 2 tones fade out of the speakers, like come in, introduced, and they then produce a 3rd tone in your ears. It's slightly lower in frequency. I know what tone that is, so I have also got 1 tone from my ears, a recording of my ear tones, pitched in that pitch, tuned in that pitch. So 2 tones enter. Your ear is producing a tone response. Once that is produced, I fade out slowly the 2 tones out of the speakers and replace that tone that those ear tones were triggering in your ears with my ear tone. And then that tone fades in again with another tone of my ears, and with the same principle evokes another tone in your ears. And then that tone is then faded in and producing another tone. So the composition is entirely generated or composed according to how the ear works, or the sort of the structure of the ear. And then it's 40 minutes long, and I've made a shorter version that I'm going to play now because it's late and you can hear that people are getting drunk. And so it's going to be a 20-minute version. I hope you can bear that. And it's you have this sort of spiral structure that goes down, and then I'm working with canon. Oh, it's going to be 15 minutes. And then canon, where I play tone on a tone. So if 1 tone is produced, then that goes on to produce the 2nd tone in your ear. While that 2nd tone is produced in your ear, I introduce the same thing, but on top. So that while the 2nd tone is produced in your ears, the 1st tone is produced, and then the third, and the second, and the first, and it goes on. And then, you know, something else. One thing more. You're very welcome to listen to your ears. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes it's better than others. And please move your head, because you'll experience wild changes. Yes, it's not dangerous. I still hear, almost. And you can ask questions afterwards if you want.
Does anyone would like to ask any questions to Jacob?
Where did those sounds come from?
From your ears.
Where did those sounds come from?
You mean where they're generated? And the hair cells in the cochlea, the spiral organ. There are small hairs that vibrate, and they were recorded, picked up in my ears, into my computer. I tuned them, played them out of the speakers, and I don't know if you had the sensation of hearing something in your own ears. Did any of you? So yeah, that was the response, probably. I don't know where else they come from space.
How come the sound changes so much when you move your head?
It's because the sounds are played out through the speakers, and they hit the walls and bounce back, just like echoes. The scientists are not interested in those kind of things, so they placed loudspeakers inside my ears. Small ones, of course, so that they could get a pure signal and a pure response. What I'm interested in is something in between, where you learn about your ears, that they are not just holes, but they are also active organs, and they're instruments as well. And to create an interactive piece in a way that you can actually literally move within and choose your position and the way you want to hear it. And discover how sounds can be placed in a room as standing waves. So, because what happens is that the sounds enter the room and they create these waves in the room. So if you move out of the wave, you know you have a wave, it's like a line and then goes up and down underneath. So when it hits this line, you have a so-called zero crossing, where you have sort of cancelling out of sounds. So that's what you experience when you move, I guess. The wow wow in the end. Yeah. Well, then it moves a bit into physics of sound. I mean, it's sound is a wave. It's like water, air pressure. I think it's interference beats. It's the difference between two different waves. Imagine if you have one wave that has let's just say 100 of these waves per second, hertz, and then you have 99 together. Then you have one wave or 1 hertz. That's 1 wave per second less. And that will then create, with the difference beat between these two waves, a difference of 1 second. That means it will be like, it will sort of cancel itself out each second, because it will not go synchronically. It will sort of go opposite. So it will be like whoop, whoom, whoom, whoom. Yeah, so because what I'm doing with this the canon piece, or when it moved towards the end, was that I was doing the canon on canon on canon in order to create confusion in a way, or...
Wait, is there any other questions? Physics of sound? Beatboxing?
Can you explain the canon?
If I can explain the canon? Yes, I can explain it a bit more. You remember that the sound started from above, from a high pitch. And I started from high pitch because it almost sounds like fasten seatbelts when they speak in the airplanes. I'm sorry to be so. These drinks are really good, actually. These cocktails. They're fantastic. When you have 2 frequencies above, with the 1 to 1.2 ratio, the ear generates a slightly lower tone, right? That's what I explained in the beginning. So when that lower tone is generated, I call that the third or that the first tone that is generated, it's quite high pitch. Since I know what frequency that is, I have made I have tuned one of my ear tones into that frequency that I'm using the other frequencies of my ears or pitches to generate in your ear. So I take 2 tones from my ear, make your ear play 1 tone with that with those 2 frequencies. Then when those 2 frequencies fade out, naturally the tone that is generated or evoked by those 2 tones also disappear from your ear. But by fading those 2 out, which means also that tone that is generated in your ear, I replace that tone with a tone from my ear that has that pitch that you were just hearing played by your ear. So I use 2 tones to create a tone in your ear, and then I replace that tone with the tone of my ear in the same pitch. And that pitch I combine with another tone of my ear that has the same ratio as the previous 2 tones. And those new 2 tones, they evoke another tone in your ear, a new one that is slightly lower. And I also know what tone that is. So I take that tone from my ear tones and replace it with that tone that you have. Is that clear? More or less?
Everybody has many tunes,
And
so...
That's what you call the canon, like...
Yeah, that's that do that way. It's kind of a canon. No, that's true, because it's not the canon. This is the structure. So that's the structure. You understand the structure. So if you imagine playing the first tone, then I go on to the second tone, the slightly lower. When I go on to the second, I play the first tone on top of that one. I start from the beginning. And then when the first one moves on to generate or to evoke the third tone in your ear, the one that was playing the first tone before is now playing the second. And then another one comes in and plays the first. So as the composition moves ahead, more and more tones on top of each other are played. And thereby hopefully creates this what you call because that was not intentional, that was just a method. Because I don't like to work as a composer like in a conventional sense, to sit and think of a feeling that I want to sort of make you moved or something. I rather want to move you in another way by doing some method and trying to work with your ear and see what happens. And then what happened was this, like for me, like it was sort of bouncing between my ears.
Yeah, did you have the speakers like in stereo somehow? Because it was definitely beating from one ear to the other.
Yeah, in the beginning I used one tone here and the other one here. And then thinking you as the third loudspeaker. But what's really interesting here, I think, is that what you hear, you are completing the composition. Because I use your ears as ears, or like as loudspeakers, but you can only hear them yourself. So if you put a microphone in this room, record the composition as I've made it, you won't be able to actually record the composition. Because part of the sounds that I am evoking in this composition are happening inside your ears.
But when we listen to the composition, we really feel the third sound, but it won't be record.
Yes, because you hear it played by your ear. It's not that loud so that other people can hear it.
So you are never playing 3 sounds?
I am when I do the canon. I used to...
Sound is always coming from us.
Yeah, in the beginning, when I do this more stringent sort of descending tonal structure, it's more scientific, if you will. When you go to canon, it becomes more artistic, because I'm not intending to let you understand everything, because I'm not a scientist. I want to create a sonic experience, or pleasure, or inspiration that makes you hear and want to move your head and think, whoa, now I hear this, and whoa, now I can hear my ear playing. And I'm actually playing with the composition. That's fun. And not to know what happens, so that this thing start to happen. It was unintentional. It was something that happened that I discovered that I really loved. But normally the composition is longer and it's more quiet than here. That's what I prefer, when it's like really, you know. But I mean, I love this setting. Yeah, it's fantastic. You know? But it's also good for really contemplating. For me. Yes? Sorry? Auto acoustic emissions. OTO, acoustic in one word. Emission. You can look it up on the internet. Somebody else?
Yeah, for me the sound was like, I don't know, audio roller coaster or something, and like making me a little nauseous and wanting to puke kind of a little bit, and then afterwards now my ears kind of hurt. Is that normal?
I'm sorry if your ear hurts. Are they really hurting? Okay. Well, I have an insurance and... No, I mean, sorry. I mean, it's not my intention to make people's ears hurt, but the title of the piece is labyrinthitis. And labyrinthitis is actually an infection of the ear that causes balance disorder, that makes you sick. Yes, great. I mean, I must be honest and say, I was looking into the names of the ear, and there are so many amazing names. You know, the temple and I mean, look it up. I mean, it's so beautiful. And you have the labyrinth and the labyrinthitis. That is actually a sort of this infection that causes this balance disorder. And so I thought by going in and actually moving your hair cells and making your ears play, I discovered that I felt pretty sort of turned out of my imbalance. But it's not my intention to destroy the ears by far, because I want to open people's ears. It's an intense experience, and it can be too much for some people. You know? But I have been listening to this many times. I have performed this many times, and I don't know. I'm still hearing.
To me, it was like you found the resonance of the physical ear. Like I felt like my ear was vibrating. It wasn't like almost not a sound emission, but more like a physical reaction.
He says that his ears were like vibrating and resonating, and like more like a physical sensation. And I think that's perfectly true. That's what it is, because it is it's very much resonance. Because you can apply this technique or this idea in basic if you create interference beats or in other music. There was a composer in the 18th century or 17th century called Giuseppe Tartini, and he invented, or he found out, that if he played two specific tones on his violin, he would hear a third tone, and he thought it was more or less like a ghost tone. But I looked into this composition and found that he uses that ratio that the scientists use, that 1 to 1.2. So what I think is that what Tartini did was he was actually evoking his hair cells. He was really working with the resonant spectra of the ear, of the cochlea, because the sound that you hear in your ear is actually happening. It's like the liquid in the basilar membrane. Last question? I didn't hear that.
The induced tone, does it change from person to person, or it's always the same exactly?
If you, he asks if the tone, induced tone, is always the same, the pitch. Yes. Yes.
Because we have different ear structures, I guess.
No, we have the same ear structures. The cochlea, this little bone, is the only bone that never grows in our body. It's always the same from birth. And the reason for this is, if you imagine, you know the Doppler effect, the ambulance. The reason why it sounds like this is because you have a sound source on top of the car, that's the siren, or the car. It is basically that the sound source moves away from us and the waves get longer. And the longer they get, the lower the pitch, because the less waves you have. So inside the ear, the physics are sort of the same, or totally the same structure, the same distance between the different hair cells. Because if you play in, like as I said before, 400 hertz, you will have a specific place in your cochlea that evokes a specific place, or like make the standing wave, and that evokes exactly those, or triggers those hair cells to actually tell the brain this frequency is what is played. If we had different cochleas, we would hear different pitch, and we would hear, you know, something that other people would call out of tune. So we hear the same, but what I do is to play the sound out in the room, and so to create these cancellations. You hear the same pitch, but you can move within the sound in the intensity and also in the pitch. So where you sit, you might hear some other tones, because the standing waves of certain frequencies that are coming from the speakers are more intense where you are sitting. So you might hear different things than others, but it's not because of your ear structure. Yes, last question.
This also explains why it varies from the one ear to the other.
Yes.
I'm not sitting in the direct mid.
That's true.
Okay.
Because, yeah, that's true. I thought of this too, and I tried also before to move my head exactly like if I heard a sound here, I tried to move my head like into that sound, and I discovered that I then heard it here. So you can move physically in that sound in the space. You want more? I mean, I'm happy to talk if you want more questions. I just don't want to keep you away from the cocktails. I'm going home. But yes, thank you very much.